Hi guys, I think I'm live now. Thanks for joining me today for the second installment of Permaculture Hangouts. So the first Permaculture Hangouts was done last Sunday, and it started with understanding food forests or forest gardens as we call it. The purpose behind starting with forest gardens and food forests is food forests represent one of the ways in which permaculture can be implemented right now, and you need not have to go to far off agricultural places, to far off distant lands to practice it, as it is with most of the agriculture. You can actually start doing it right in the city. So that is the premise behind forest gardens. And what forest gardens actually start doing is that we would have discussed it in the last permaculture hangout. So do do please watch that so that you'll get a better understanding. But just to start off, forest gardens essentially mimic how a forest works. Now all of us know how resilient forests are. Nobody has to go there to put water or to put fertilizer or pesticide. Okay, just a small check. I know that I'm visible, but I'd just like to make sure that I'm audible also. So those who are in the chat right now, please do say something if you can hear me. If you just see me lip syncing and with no words coming out, please say, talk about that. Right. So forests, as I was saying, represent one of the ways in which we can have systems extremely resilient, and forests are sustainable. Actually, forests always produce surplus. So throughout most of the time, when the forests are young, they would keep on creating surplus, surplus, surplus. It is only towards the end that they would be using their energy essentially for maintaining themselves, but otherwise, through and through, forests are not just sustainable, forests actually create abundance. So the forest, along with the trees, the animals, the insects, the shrubs, the herbs, the ground covers, the vines, birds, and everything included, it will not only be running itself, but it can also give you an output in terms of fruits or foods of different variety. It can give you dry firewood. Of course, you should not log the trees, but yeah, lots of branches will fall down, which can be used for cooking purposes. Now, this is how it used to be done traditionally also. So forests in that sense have been an inspiration for humanity, and many civilizations also uh, tended to be near forests because forests are, again, as I said, they give that surplus which is useful in your domestic life as well. And in permaculture design certificate course, we even go as far as talking of how you can or should be doing sustainable agriculture by including elements from forest and actually having a forest near your place. So today's class, we are how me and DJ have planned it is that uh, lots of people got interested in the idea of forest gardens after the last permaculture hangout, and so we just wanted to take it a step further and talk about some strategies and some more ways in which you can establish forest gardens. So we see lots and lots of empty spaces in the city, around the city, and they are small pockets of land. They are not huge pieces of land or huge parcels of land. Could be as small as 200 square yards, your regular housing plot size, or they could be maybe one fourth of an acre or half of an acre. So these are not your big, huge places where you would want to do agriculture, but they are not small either. Now, there is a very good trend which has started that many people are realizing that, at least a few people have started realizing that no land should be kept free. And so, if it is possible, they are trying to grow certain things there. People are going and doing some kind of gardening there, which is really, really a good step, because nature does not want land to be free. It will always have something or the other growing on it. So, in the same way, uh, people are also trying to keep the land occupied, the land busy. But things could be taken a step further, and especially with by taking into consideration what permaculture talks of and the principles of permaculture, we can actually start having fruits and other stuff actually growing pretty near where you are staying. So something which was till now thought impossible, and many people don't even think about it, could be done. And the best part of it is that it can start giving you lots and lots of savings in terms of maintenance, in terms of the water required, and other stuff. So most of the problems that uh, a city has, that is lack of space, lack of huge spaces, or lack of resources, lack of resource in the sense of water and other things, and lack of time. People are busy. People are busy, busy, busy. So morning to evening, you are there in the job, and it is difficult to take care of something actively. So uh, we have a very good solution in permaculture, and that is called a forest garden. So that is what we are going to discuss today. And let me just quickly set this up, because I think I need to invite DJ, that is Dwarakanath Jnaneswar, for this, right? And it seems I can't find his email address in the pre-populated list. Okay, yeah, now I do have. I've sent an invite to him. Okay, the invitation has been posted. So he'll be joining us. He he has been my mentor, my friend, and he taught me permaculture. So I did my certification course under him. And in Nagol, he established two forest gardens which are currently up and running. So it would be really nice actually to hear from him. Now, let me just make sure that he's got the invite. Okay, so it seems that DJ is still waiting to get the invite. Okay. Uh, just looking at the chat room, we have Sudhiranjan Garu. Sudhiranjan Garu, um, thanks for liking the presentation that happened last week. I hope this adds further to what could be done, the possibilities that could be done in different places. And then there is Madhu there in the chat room. Then there is Anuradha Guda, who also happens to be my sister. So joined by a couple of family members, uh, along with well-wishers. So in Nagol, we got into permaculture in about 2009, when we were trying to understand uh, what permaculture is all about, how we could get food security, how we could get essentially be independent and not really be dependent on the society or the authorities for most of our own requirements. So that is how we actually got into um permaculture. And it was a bit surprising, because permaculture had most of the ideas that we had, and we had a couple of more ideas than what permaculture still has. But it was a codified knowledge. Actually, Bill Mollison puts this beautifully. Once when he was talking about permaculture, and probably during a PDC, that is a permaculture design certificate course that he was teaching, a person comes to him and says, do you know what you have done? And Bill is like, I'm not so sure. He says, you have found the best way in which you can put all of humanity's knowledge. So you've got a perfect hanger in which you can put things. So there was this analogy of a cupboard with a hanger with all different clothes that you want. And pretty much in the same way, permaculture can actually help organize human uh, knowledge and codify it in a way that it makes much more sense, and it is much more accessible. And that is where you find, that's another place where you find difference between permaculture and the rest of the disciplines that we have. That is that you can learn quite a bit. You can actually maybe uh, invent or discover in different fields, but at the end of the day, what starts happening is that you still can't uh, use it in a way where it is useful. So we have lots and lots of uh, things happening, and people are doing progress in a lot of fields. But what is happening is that there is a slight disconnect between what people do in one discipline and in the other discipline. And what that starts doing is that the information is there, but it is only there as a potential information. It's really something that we can't make much use of. So for example, internet has become so huge that the information that is there, in one sense it is really accessible, but in another sense it is completely lost. It's not like a library per se. A library, you could limit it to, let's say, a million books or a billion books. There is a particular way in which you could try to limit a library. But on the internet you have so much information that there are experiences, there are personal anecdotes, then there are stories, and then there's lots of stuff happening, so that sometimes it becomes just too much to handle. So permaculture in that sense is actually able to put things in correct perspective. It is able to do things in the best possible way, so that you can actually start using those things to the advantage and start creating sustainable and resilient systems. And once you have something which is sustainable, and that already means that you are on the correct track, that means that you are working with nature and understanding what nature does. And when that starts happening, you will start getting the surplus that nature can provide. And that is precisely what starts happening in a forest garden. In a forest garden, as I said, you are looking at different layers which are there in the forest, and those different layers, those different heights. You have one tree, and then you have another tree, and then you have a shrub layer, and then you have another layer, and all these layers. If you just look at it, of course, you won't find this kind of a taper in the forest. You would be seeing lots and lots of things happening there. So DJ has joined in, but let me just complete. So what happens is that you have a forest which has all these layers working in tandem, and this is what we try to uh, implement, or we try to get inspired from in a forest garden. So you try to have as many layers as is possible, and once you have those things, uh, what should I say, working beautifully, you have been able to establish those things, you start reaping what the nature has intended, and you start getting surplus. So very soon you'll be finding that although you started a forest garden to be more sustainable, you would end up probably by your first harvest in abundance, because the kind of produce that you get is simply not enough for one person. So with that, let me hand over the conversation to Dwarakanath Jnaneswar, DJ. On the chat, you can see him by the name the Great Indian Rooftop Garden. So that is one rooftop which is, in a certain sense, modeled like a forest garden itself. So no need to think that forest gardens can only be on land. Okay, and more from DJ. I think.
Yeah, can everybody hear me? I would like it if everybody types one in their chat boxes. If you can hear me, if you can see me, can you see me? Sai, can you see me? Hear me?
Okay, I have muted myself, but yeah, I can hear you, I can see you, and I just need to log in from the other system. That's what's taking me time.
All right, that's excellent. Hello, everybody. My name is Dwarakanath. For those who are already in chat, you all know me, but those people who are going to watch this in recording, you might not know me. So my name is Dwarakanath. My friends and people call me DJ. Uh, Today we are here talking about food forests because last week Sai did a webinar which garnered great response, and it was about understanding food forests. You know, the reason for establishing food forests, the benefits of it, the basics of a food forest, and how we need to start thinking about it. But this week it is about establishing it, actually establishing it, and both of us wanted to do this together. Me kind of being a second bouncing board of ideas here along with Sai, and we have done a type of a food forest here in Hyderabad that just rocked the place, and we abused it a lot. Let me tell you, we watered it, did not water it, shit mulched it, took it off, this that. However, that helped us learn a lot of stuff. For instance, one of the first things you need to look at when you want to establish a food forest is uh, this is typical permaculture systemic thinking. Where do you stay? What kind of a climate do you have? Whether the forest garden that you want to establish is in open ground, like in a field, or is it in an urban plot like I have? For me, the west side is a huge 3-story building, which means all the afternoon sun is blocked. When we were establishing the food forest, we had to take that into consideration. But the first thing you need to think of is where you want to set up the forest garden. First of all, let's talk climate. Now, I kind of can't see the chat, and it's pretty weird staring at my own face in my own Google Hangout window. So I'm kind of talking to myself, and I seem pretty enthusiastic to hear myself.
Okay, DJ, nothing much is happening on the chat room. Only highs and ones and highs and ones.
So, but I was talking about I can only see myself. I can't see you people. So in case anybody has a question, do pop it in the chat. Sai will communicate it to me. And even though you see two different screens and systems and places, I am right here. We just needed to share the screen separately. Therefore, we are here together. He's in the room right next to me, and this is his bachelor's pad, this first floor of his home, and we are having fun here. I can see chat there. Now let me get back to the forest gardens. The first thing we need to think of is the climate, because different climates support different types of forests. For example, in the place we are around Hyderabad, the forest is called a scrub forest. It has a peculiar structure. The scrub forest, layers of a scrub forest, the types of species that survive there, the overall structure of a forest and how it functions is very different from a rainforest. And let me give you a beautiful example here, which has happened to me. That is that initially we watered our food forests. We did irrigate it with borewell water. Of course, it's a very small plot of land, and compared to any other normal gardens, we were watering it way low, like once a month or once every 3 months. It was like that. Very initially, we would water it every day, but back then we did not even know what plant is what. But once we started getting the point and understanding permaculture, we mulched it heavily. We were just looking at signs of things drooping and give it a good watering. that will be once every 2 months, 3 months, and probably not at all in the monsoon season. So very little water, but we were irrigating it, and that made my garden behave as if it is a it's a tropical rainforest. It was so dense, so thick. It had huge understory. I mean, lots and lots of plants, thousands of plants in a 150 square yards plot. But for the last 1.5 2 years, what I decided was, let me see. Even if all my plants die, I want to see the response of a forest garden that I established without any water. So we did not irrigate it at all, and that gave me a kind of a view, a kind of an understanding into what starts happening when you take off water. My forest garden put itself in Hyderabad before it thought it was in some equatorial rainforest region, so it was growing rampantly. But once I stopped watering and let it get water naturally, it adapted itself to be structured like a scrub forest. It would have partial, semi-partial ground cover, slow to rot mulches, woody mulches, all the shrubs and trees growing only in monsoon, and not a lot of understory. What is an understory? Last week's webinar answers it clearly. That is, you have several layers of plants in a forest. There are the big ones, the canopy, then there are the slightly smaller ones, and there are ones below that, and there is the shrub layer, there is a herbaceous layer. I'll go into this a bit deeply as we talk about establishing. But my point here is that my forest garden, which looked like a rainforest, when I gave it water, started behaving like a scrub forest, which is native to this place. And that really tells you the first clue as to how you would want to establish a food forest. Now, if you are in Hyderabad, first start looking at whether you have irrigation or not, what kind of climate you are in, and then think about what is the structure of the forest in your local area. If you go towards Vizag or Eastern Ghats or Western Ghats, the forest structure is very different to that of Hyderabad. The number of layers, what are the biggest trees, how big is the biggest tree, what's the distance between plants, what's the distance between trees, and is it a forest where you have layer and layer and layer? Is it a forest that has too many creepers or too many herbs, herbaceous layer, the bottommost shrubs and bushes? Are there too many of those and less of trees? Are there too many trees and less of that? You have some forests where there are only tall trees and underneath there's almost nothing growing. Huge trees. For example, you go to boreal forests, the cool climate forests, you have larger trees. They all turn bright orange like they are on fire during winters, and they drop their leaves and there's hardly anything underneath. You have these tall trees but nothing underneath. Then you come down one step, you have herbaceous growth, abundance of herbaceous growth and big trees. You don't have too many middle ones. For example, you go to a place that is farther from the equator than where we are, you will have distance between trees increasing because they are all looking for sunlight, and those that don't get that kind of sunlight do not survive that long, because far away from the equator you do not have adequate sunlight. I hope I'm making sense here, and I hope the way I'm speaking is not too fast. So if there is a lag as usual between the chat windows and this, so even if I ask you to type once, by the time you type it, I'll be talking more. However, if you don't understand what I'm speaking, please do let me know so that I can talk more slowly like this. I can do that pretty comfortably, or I can speak really fast as I do usually. Now, once you take a look at the climate, you will look at what is the best time to establish your forest garden. You know, the best time is when there is water, when there is moisture. Now, somebody might say, "Oh, I have a borewell, so I can establish a food forest anytime I want." That is true, no doubt about that. You can do that, but still, the best time is going to be, for example, in Hyderabad around monsoon. And the reason is not about watering the trees. This is something we all, people need to understand. The soil biology is the basis for a food forest. You have all your beautiful microbes and fungi growing. Just before the rain occurs, there is heat here. Our climate is in such a way that after the extreme heat of summer, we have monsoon, then we have cold. That pattern changes from place to place. Just on a right side of a mountain, it will be different from the left side. So you have to be clear about that. But there is a response from the soil biology for the first rain after heat. The soil has become hot, therefore all the fungi and bacteria migrate deep inside the soil and stay there pretty much dormant. They don't have enough moisture usually. But once the first rain falls and the land cools down and it becomes moist, that is when the fungal and bacterial activity kicks in, and the soil gets all the beauty of soil life. And if you plant a tree in the appropriate season, it is highly likely that it will survive and do much more beautifully than you put it there with irrigation. Yeah, irrigation tends to mimic a rainfall, and the microbes will get cheated a little bit and start activating. But once the water dries off in the afternoon or in a couple of days, the bacteria dies off. And for example, in our region, the trees also respond differently during monsoon. We have during rainfall, after the first rain, there is a measurable increase in the activity of roots on the surface. Trees actually grow fresh roots at almost 8 feet per week. And they're all surfacial roots. So the tree is like this, and this is the soil surface. All around the surface, they'll grow, and the bottom ones go dormant. But once the summer starts coming, the top ones die off. The top roots become dormant, and they die off. The bottom ones increase, and it's a natural cycle. So if you plant your tree in the wrong season, you might not get the adequate response. The other side of the story with climate is that you have to be careful when the plants shed their leaves. There are evergreen green plants, and there are deciduous plants, and there are seasonal decidual plants. There are trees that shed their leaves during summer. There are trees that shed their leaves during rainy. This is also very important because if you are planting a tree that is going to have a leaf fall during December, if you plant it now, yeah, it'll stay there, the leaves will stay there, but immediately drop off. So all the cool winter is not helping it to really rejuvenate. Sorry, if you plant it now, it's all right because it's already shed the leaves and it's going to put fresh leaves and fresh roots. So you put a December deciduous plant in there, it is going to do good. But if you do it in February, you kind of it'll lose its leaves, and it's not the right season for it to put all the leaves back, and so it will have a stunted growth. So these are the things to consider. These are some of the things to consider when establishing a food forest. Now, who would have thought climate plays such an important role in establishing a food forest? Now, think about this. After you check out the climate, you essentially need to look at the way the sun travels in the sky. That's the second part. Forgive me for jumping into establishing a food forest garden topic so fast. There is usually a build up, and that is my phone. I forgot to put it in silent mode. Yeah, let me do it. Sorry for jumping into the establishment subject so fast. If somebody is not really prepped up for it. It is an essential technology. So let me take this as a segue and talk about the importance of establishing it, particularly in today's world. The atmosphere carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide is very, very high. There is a video on YouTube from NASA that shows the patterns of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide in our atmosphere over a period of 1 year. That is, where is it getting generated, where is it being carried by winds, etc. And if you look at the world, come springtime in northern hemisphere, most of that carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide is sucked in by plants. You can actually see that in that video, in the color changes that happen in that video. You can actually see the levels of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide being soaked up as if a sponge as if a sponge has absorbed it. There's a lot of it, and in cities we are releasing more and more of it every day. So a food forest is actually all that carbon dioxide in the form of a tree, in the form of trees, leaves. You are sequestering carbon. That is an outside use from what a person needs for himself. But on the other side, what do you need as a person, as a community these days, is reduce everything like heat island effect. You would like to have many things that you produce locally, and a forest garden does not just produce corn and wheat and soy and vegetables and all of that. It can do that, but you are going to end up with surplus material for trellis, for example, for your gardens. You can get firewood, you can get eggs, you can get manure, you can get great soil, you can get mulches. All of that from a very small area. That essentially makes the food forest or forest garden an important technology for this world, because even if you establish it in 100 square meters plots all around the city, the amount of air pollution it can reduce, the amount of local production it can do, the amount of biodiversity management that it does, it gives a haven for bees, lots of birds. Many birds and many insects are very highly tuned to particular levels of sound. The noises that we make with our horns and cars and bikes and all of that is very disturbing for the natural organisms. Never before the world has seen such high levels of sound. Never before. Only sporadically during weather events or volcanoes or whatnot were the noises so high. But now we are literally in bad noise, swimming in bad noise, and nature is not, many animals and even plants are not adapted to that kind of a stress, particularly insects. They communicate via sounds that we can't hear, and all this noise is impeding that. Actually, whales are having a problem in oceans because of the traffic of airlines and shipways on seas. We do not think of that when we are thinking of what we are doing with our own lives. And food forest, it becomes so dense that at the center of it there is a certain calm. Most of the trees and plants, those leaves will absorb all the fine vibrations and create a sense of calm in the middle, which makes a haven for many species. That's one of the yields. There are so many beneficial aspects of a food forest or a forest garden that it is simply excuse me, an absolutely essential technology if the world has to go forward. That's why we have decided to do these webinars. And why I have jumped so fast into establishing itself is because it's such a vast subject, and I want to share as much of it as I can on this 3 hour, 2 hour, 2.5 hour show, this webinar. And it's not enough. I usually teach forests and trees for about 3 days in a PDC. One day completely for trees and how trees behave and what are the features of trees and how we can use trees. Another day on forest gardens, and then yet another day on water harvesting and water management strategies on a forest uh, garden type of scenario. But I am trying to cram it, as much of the basics of it here. So let's get back to establishing a food forest or a forest garden. Now, once you have decided on the climate, check out the way the sun goes in the sky. In Hyderabad, where we stay, the sun goes towards the north during summers, hot summers, and it goes south like this in this angle during winters. Right now, it's going coming back towards the north, towards the summer. Around December, it will be pretty much in the center, and then it will go all the way to the north pretty soon. Um, so it is. This is the kind of angle we have. This is north side and this is south side. So if you plant a big tree here, you will provide a healthy natural shade for your little plants that are on the south side during summers, but in winter everything will get sun. um, I hope I'm making sense with this. So You will plant trees and stuff like that based on the shade they give. This is the second part of choosing a site and thinking about how to establish a forest garden. I will cover this more in detail in a few minutes. Then the third thing you will do is select the right kind of trees and plants that suit your weather, that suit your purpose, that suit your labor conditions, that suit your local situations. In terms of whether it is by the side of a road and there is a lot of dust coming into the forest garden, you might not be inclined to plant too many leafy greens, but you would want to have a trellis that screens off the road and all of that stuff. You can design it according to the locality. You need to, based on the size and based on the location, you will select the apt trees. For example, my forest gardens are full of custard apples. They grow extremely well naturally here. Even in the barest of bare farms, you can see one or two of these trees. And if you mulch it properly, they take care of themselves absolutely fine. If they have a gentle, good monsoon, they are going to be prolific. It's a beautiful tree to have. Plus, it is so high in sugars. Very, very, very high in sugars. Plus, why I planted so many of them is partly because I love them. Second reason is, for every fruit you eat, you get about 60 to 80 seeds, viable seeds from it. Not one, not two. It's an easy seed, custard apple seed, right? And that was one of my original thoughts, that I get so many seeds which I can propagate and share it with people, and probably plant them in permaculture projects that I do. So it's also a kind of a nursery basis for me. Whereas you take mango, for one fruit you get one seed. You have two trees, yeah, you will get sizable number of seeds and all of that. But a custard apple is out, completely in a different league. So that is one of the reasons I selected that. The other reason I selected is that it can remain pretty short comparatively to mango. A mango will be very productive if it is huge. It's a sun hogger. It loves sun. Nothing grows underneath it. Whereas this custard apple is not like that. It can be lanky. It can give dappled shade. Similarly, moringa. You can grow anything under moringa. It does not really shade out anything. Yeah, it does give some shade, but it gives dappled shade, and virtually anything can be grown because we are in a tropical climate. We have too much sun, um, absolutely too much sun. So we can really manage the sun very well with the kind of plants that we select. I also selected sapota because of its high sugars. It is so high in sugars that you can eat it and go around having a marathon. So in a small space of 150 square yards where we set up this forest garden, it is particularly challenging to select the right kind of plants, right kind of trees. And sapota is one of them, because just from a single tree you can get enough sugars to consume, that you don't need ever glucose or anything else to keep you going. That is one of the reasons. The other reason is you can you can the sugars are so high in sapota that you can easily ethanolize it, alcoholize it. So I won't experiment with that. Of course, not alcohol to drink, but more as a fuel. So that is one more reason why I was pumped up to plant sapote. So this is the kind of thinking you will start having when we are selecting trees, and then adapt them to the climate. Then you will think of succession. That's another important point in establishing a food forest or a forest garden. That is, what plant matures when, what plant grows when. A very good, easy example to understand is, consider the temperate regions of the world. It's kind of easy to understand. Places like Australia, Northern Australia, England, etc., where there is temperate subtropical climate. After the snowfall, everything grows. But the first thing that really jumps out is the herbaceous layer. All these green, leafy, soft shrubs, soft plants, they first boom out. The first spring light, they jumpstart their growth process. Slowly, once they have kind of covered, they have got enough growth and got enough leaves and all that, another plant that's slightly taller than this and slightly more woody will start going berserk, and it will put out its leaves and it will have its own setup. And after that, you'll have leaves forming on big trees, apples and all of that. Apple blossoms gone, apple leaves start after spring. So the herbaceous layer is fully healthy. It utilized the initial solar energy fastest, and then it took off. Then the woody shrubs came over, and when they grew, they did not really shade out. They don't really shade out. If they shade out, these plants will die. But some of them, many of them, get that dappled sunlight, and that's enough because of the huge leaf area that the herbaceous layer already has put out. Therefore, the second one comes not a problem. Then the trees come not a problem. But if it happens in reverse, for example, if trees put out all their leaves, not enough sunlight for the rapid growth of herbaceous layer, we will kind of think about this when we are establishing a food forest. Okay, what do we want? We want this plant. Okay, when is it going to fruit? When is it going to put out new leaves? When is its growth rampant? You will kind of think about that. Then the last thing you will think of, actually, as you come towards the end of your thinking process, is watering strategies. That comes later, and that will refine your plant selection. And one more step later, you will then start placing elements in your garden based on their locality and all of that. And plants get selected once again. Some selected plants go out because the situation is not suitable for that. And by that time, you are in pretty good shape with all the stuff you need to establish a food forest or a forest garden. Now that I have laid out a very quick run through of all the things you need to consider, let me go into it a bit slowly and clearly. Imagine a colony with a park, a typical Hyderabadi colony, 4-storied apartments, 5-storied apartments, short buildings if you compare it with New York skyscrapers, but they are pretty tall in terms of shading neighbors out. There are all these apartment buildings, and there is this tiny itty bitty park in there, and it is supposed to be green garden and all of that, and the builders have given off a postage stamp sized park, and half of that is taken up by the community hall and slides and all those things for kids, and then half of it is left where it is supposedly in engineering drawings it will be lush green, but when you actually go there, it is full of pebbles, dust, scrap paper, plastic covers and all of that, and kids running around it playing. That's a typical scenario you have. Now what is happening there? I will try something here. I have a tablet. The reason for these screens is to be able to show you things as I draw them. I have a tablet, I'm doing this. I would like Sai Prasanna Kumar to take it from here and answer a couple of questions that I put to him on behalf of you. First thing, where and when? First question, where and when did you first hear of forest gardens, Sai Prasanna Kumar? And how did your understanding evolve over all these years? And what is the latest thing that you have learned about that? Please keep talking about that as I set up my tablet.
Okay. I hope now I am visible. Okay, so because of this control panel and all that, I'm not too used to Google Hangouts. I'm a bit scared whenever I'm changing tabs and all that. So the first time I heard of food forest was actually on the day that we were trying to establish it, because till that point of time, as I showed you, that we were, as I was saying, in 2009 we actually started knowing more about permaculture. We were setting up our own patches of food, so we were trying out companion planting, and we were actually trying to see how the growth would be in a sort of forest environment. So till that point of time, as many gardeners do, they have things put up, and what they do is that you have your seedlings and this and that, and they are usually placed in a particular way with adequate distances and other stuff. And usually you will not even find anybody doing companion planting. So we were anyways not doing that, that kind of that sort of lawn based agriculture or gardening. We were putting up things in a lots of uh, permaculture ways, where we were trying to see what goes on well with others, and is something can provide shade to something else and all those things. So that's how we were doing it. And in the forest type of environment, what we were doing is that we were just putting in seeds and seeing what happens. We were not making any particular planting distances and stuff like that. So that was the first time that I started knowing more about the growth in a forest. Now, this is also somewhat similar to Fukuoka's natural farming, where he also just you have that lovely picture of him just throwing seeds and allowing them to come. And that was the first initial inspiration. I was really inspired by Fukuoka because I thought that uh, initially that is even more easier. You just throw in some seeds and they're coming up on their own, and they can balance out themselves. So that was my first initial understanding of what Fukuoka was doing. So there is a lot of depth to what he does when you look at it, and the kind of observation skills that he developed over a period of several years when he was just looking at how nature responds and all that. But I really like that, and I felt pretty sad that Fukuoka did come once to India, and he came, I think, till Hyderabad, if I'm not wrong, and never got a chance to meet him. At that point in time, I was not even aware that there is a field like this. So he did come to India, and I missed him. So that was the first time I came to know about forest gardens. And then when we actively started putting in bananas and papayas and trying to think a bit of the kind of guilds that could be maintained, and talking of understory and cover crops, ground cover, and all those things, overstories, all those things. That was when I started understanding the science behind forest garden. By that point of time, I had also an understanding of the permaculture principles and the sustainability that it provides, which is really important. That is what was the first way in which I understood. I came across this concept and really started enjoying it. Now, the second question: what is the latest that I know of forest gardens? I don't know anything latest. I know everything about forest gardens. Would be an easy answer, but what happens in a forest garden is that there is always something or the other to learn. There is in permaculture there is a nice way in which you can look at things. Suppose there is this concept of diversity. Now, many people think that diversity means just putting random things here and there. So, diversity is not by putting, let's say, a cat and a dog in a room together, or probably mouse and a cat together. That is not diversity. Uh, we are talking of meaningful diversity in permaculture, and by introducing meaningful diversity, we are able to have all those interrelations and connections, just like I have talked of what happens in a forest. So you have something similar happening, and that is what usually is what is meant by diversity. So when we say diversity, we are actually referring to meaningful diversity. But what happens if you start having too much diversity, or you have designed it in a particular way? What happens is that if you are actively managing it, if you are, as a gardener, are basically sitting there 24 hours a day, you could probably have that kind of a system running. But otherwise, nature starts to simplify. So sometimes when you look at those patterns of how nature is trying to simplify something, the way in which you would have heard DJ say that when we were not watering, we were seeing certain kinds of patterns emerge. When we were watering, there were certain kinds of patterns emerging. There was a huge hailstorm which was there which came here, I think, in 2011, and there was that whole period of 2 weeks was one of extremes. We had uh, wind speed which was pretty high, and then within 3 or 4 days of that, we had this hailstorm, then again this wind and all that. So when you look at the response of a food forest, it is always there is something or the other which is new to see, because you can have a food forest and you can have a managed food forest. So you as a designer are orchestrating, and you are also seeing how the nature is working. So that is what there is every day something or the other new to learn in the food forest, so to say, because the ways of nature are not always completely comprehensible. So I think DJ has is there on screen share. So I'll make him active.
Yeah, I'm back, and I think you can see 3 words scribbled. Hello, hi, DJ. Uh, so I can start drawing and talking, and this is much more fun for me to do this way because it's far easier to describe what I want to describe. So here are the things that we spoke of so far: climate, then you look at sun paths / location. Then we will look at things like watering regimen / labor. We will look at succession of plants, and for our climates and for the plant selection that we make. These are the main things that we consider when establishing a food forest. That said, when you have a plot of land, this is a theoretical side of things, the thinking side, but when we come to the practice, this is how it actually takes place. First, I hope you people can see this. Sai, can you people see what I'm writing? Right, there is a delay, right? That's all right. But voice is in sync or not? Excellent. So when we come to practice, this is how we start. There is this piece of land. Say this is the area that we have allocated, and let me first talk about something large, say 1 acre. 1 acre of area, and suppose that is west, that is east, and this side is north, and of course this is what else, south, right? Now there's a 1 acre piece of land. When you decide to put a food forest, you would decide you want to plant a food forest based on certain basic requirements for a food forest. It's not wise to just have a land and look at some video or a webinar like this and get inspired and put a food forest everywhere you want, because that might actually turn out to be slightly counterproductive. We don't want any such rash inspired decisions. But why we want a forest garden to be established is that it is, first of all, very low maintenance. If you establish it right, very low maintenance. It once you plant it, there's compare it with corn or cotton. You plant it, then you harvest it, then you plow the field again, then you plant again, then you plow the field again, you fertilize it, you irrigate it. You have all of this work going on. Compared to a forest garden, once it is established, you are pretty much harvesting and occasionally planting stuff in it based on the requirement. It's not 1 acre. You plow the entire thing with tractors and this and that. It doesn't happen that way. So you would want a forest garden that provides all the functions you want. What are the possible functions that it can provide on a farm scenario? I'll come to the urban scenario slightly later. On a farm scenario, first of all, it provides a very low maintenance area. Next, it is going to provide a stable fruit production, fruit slash tree production. This is very, very, very important because trees have very, very deep roots, right? Trees have extremely deep roots. So you have a tree, and this is the soil. When you have a tree like that, its roots go pretty deep like that, which means that even in drought years, they can survive and provide you one yield or the other. Whereas your annual crops will suffer even in the slightest disturbance in their irrigation scenarios. So a typical farmer who is trying to earn a living and food from his farm, more of subsistence farming kind of a scenario, food forest will provide the kind of food security to the farmer, because the yield will be less or more based on the monsoon and other conditions, but generally it is much more resilient. This is very, very important to understand, particularly in the Indian scenario. Much more resilient in producing food with very low maintenance every year, year after year after year, season after season. Now, and you can select plants based on the kind of resilience they provide. If they are drought resistant plants, if they are high nutrition plants, for example, regu pandu, that is uh, bear in English, bear tree, BER. It's a thorny shrub, and it produces in extreme drought conditions. It does produce little berries which are very high in vitamin C, vitamin A, beautiful stuff, and they are thorny, excellent fence plants, by the way. But considering the malnutrition available in India, a bear tree in a goat pasture, a bear forest in goat pasture is going to rock. There is this ancient um, this ancient holy place in India, in the mythology, that is its literal name is a bear forest. There are lots of bear trees there, and saints and sages are living there, eating bear fruit as one of their primary diets, along with some root crops. And it's from the mythology, and that is because in a bear forest, in season, the abundance of nutrition is huge, right? So you would select plants based on that, but the kind of resilience they provide is awesome. So in a 1 acre farming scenario, you would have a food forest based on trees to provide a stable production both for the market as well as for food consumption, personal food consumption. Next thing you would think of when establishing a forest garden is you don't want to make anything that you establish on a farm a single function. You want multiple functions. A forest garden, along with providing stable food production, it is going to provide you mulch, provide you with pollinators. It will provide you with beneficial biology. Think about this. On a 1 acre farm, for example, you have a forest garden established in this area. This is not going to be tilled, not tilled, which means all the soil biology in that area is intact. You can actually get soil from underneath the trees here, put it on your veggie gardens there, and you can keep on having great biology even in a double dig gardening system. No dig gardening, even better, but even in a double dig gardening system where you are exhausting the soils a lot, you can have your soil biology in place taken from your forest garden. There's a great example of this in China. People will have a paddy field, a rice field, rice paddy, and flank it with mulberry trees. Shahdut in Hindi. These leaves are exceptionally good food to increase the nutrition in the paddy fields. The fields are deprived of zinc and other essential minerals. After each crop, you are going to take leaves of these mulberries, dropped leaves, even chopped leaves. You will chop off mulberry leaves and put them in rice paddy. Now the Chinese, what they did is they take leaves from the mulberry forest. They take leaves from the mulberry forest, and they will feed it to silkworms, as well as the surplus going to the rice paddy. The healthy leaves go to silkworms. The slightly bad ones go to rice paddies, where they get trampled into the mud. They rot there and provide exceptional nutrition. The reason for that is the annual plants have root depths like that. Just that. Whereas a tree goes far below, and it is going to gather up all minerals, bring them up into the leaves and drop it. And when the leaves drop, all those minerals that were gathered underneath the ground, all the zinc, magnesium, cadmium, all those things are dropped off as leaves onto the surface. And here soil biology will convert that into plant food and help your annual plants to survive. And that's what happened traditionally in Chinese farming. That is another yield that you get from a forest garden, the nutrient cycling. Nutrient cycling. That is your essential nutrition bank out there, and the more diverse trees and shrubs you have there, the more diverse minerals they are going to mine for your annual gardens. Then they also provide shade, windbreak to your farm wherever you require. So you would put your forest garden based on those. For example, in our climate, we would like our house to be shaded. Let me do it here. If this is our house in a tropical climate like we have here, semi-dry, we would want our trees and our food forest pretty close to the garden, probably even on both sides, because we have sun going towards the north and south very regularly. And in the middle we would have one tree and climbers all over the house and all of that. The reason is that hot winds coming in are going to be cooled down by the forest garden by the time they reach the house. And this provides a kind of a buffer for the people who are staying in the house. They can usually, people here traditionally and in a most healthy way, spend most of the time outside the houses. We are not in a cold climate where it's too cold outside. We spend time outside in the open, not in indoors, unlike most of us today in the urban scenario. So the trees provide a kind of a shade, a nice, extremely healthy playing area for the kids, beautiful area, and you can keep the surroundings clean around the house to prevent any scorpions and snakes to come. Beyond that, you can have a really wild forest type of zone. Probably on the east side of your house, you'll have a nice little garden going on, and the mulch from here keeps on helping that garden. So you will look at your overall scenario, your requirement, and based on that, you will plant it. Forest gardens also provide fodder. Fodder. And this, at this point, let me let me differentiate a small little point that I keep in mind personally. It's not really that technical, but I personally keep this in mind, and that is that food forest has a domination of food trees, whereas a forest garden in general can have things like mehendi, medicinal plants, timber, forest, fodder, firewood, utility things like cotton, etc. as dominant species. Whereas in a food forest, we'll have more of food trees, plants that give food, dominating especially in large numbers. So I kind of think of a food forest as the generic term, of a forest garden as a generic term, and food forest as one type of a forest garden. We can have forest gardens that essentially provide the medicines, and timber and fodder, etc. So based on that, even a forest garden will have fruit trees and food trees. The diversity is very important, and multiple functions that we get is very important. That said, I will differentiate this based on what it is that we want to do. So as a farmer, you can have a forest that grows uh, decent food, but also provides a lot of fodder for the cow or for the goat that they have, whose manure is going to enliven the fields that they have, the gardens that they have. Now, animals, for instance, just like every living being, would require a complete balanced diet, complan, right? Complan. No, not complan. They would require all the minerals or the trace elements, etc., in their fodder to keep their digestive tracts healthy, to keep their hearts healthy, brains healthy. I know generally they don't get any diseases that way. They are more happy, they behave well, they yield well, they fatten well. If you're going for butchering and meat, they give a lot of milk. Now, trees and forest gardens do get all those mined minerals back to the animals. Therefore, it's a very beautiful interaction, a necessary interaction that trees provide on a farming scale. Based on that, you would select an area in your 1 acre plot where to put. So I will draw a profile of the landscape. Say this is the land. Say it's a flat land. Or first, as an example, let me do a land that's slightly sloped because it's easier to explain certain concepts. A land that is sloped like that, gentle slope. You have selected this piece of land to be your forest garden, whether it is for fodder or whatever. Now you are living in, say, Hyderabad, and your climate is semi-arid, wet and dry tropics. You will look at whether you have irrigation or not. You will look at whether you have labor or not, because the more labor, the more effort you can put into it, the more you can get out of it. You can plant annual shrubs, annual crops within your forest garden system, and I'll explain that. Now, on this piece of land, suppose you don't have irrigation. Many people in India, many farmers, beautiful people, don't have borewell there, borewells, deep dug wells, etc., no irrigation. And let me first tackle the difficult situation initially, so that it becomes kind of easy later on. In an area like Hyderabad, the rainfall is around 800 mm, 700, 800 mm, and when you are searching for trees for your food forest or forest garden, you will look at trees that are going to do extremely well in 800 millimeters. Now, what that means is that at every point on the land, there is going to be 800 millimeters of water falling on that land, and it is going to soak into the soil if the soil is good. If the soil is bad, all that water is going to simply run off and carry away with it any nutrition possibilities. Once you understand this part, imagine all the water falling on this land, 800 mm of it. What if you can concentrate that water, all of this water, from here to here in a place that is there? If you can take all this water, all the excess water, and put it into one place, what happens is effectively this area has about 1600 mm of rainfall. whereas this area now has less water, so it is more like 400 mm. Now what did that do? That gave you an essential diversity. Here I'm going to plant trees that are very drought hardy, and here I'm going to plant trees that are very rainforest, like jackfruit, uh, etc. Now if it rains in a particular area very heavily, the jackfruit is going to go bonkers and give me huge yields, right? And if it's a dry year, it will be less in dry years, but these will be rocking, and they will provide, all these trees will provide me stability in my harvest. So I will have, for example, bare and other dry preferring trees there, and in the middle you'll have mango, etc., which do love very well drained soil. They do love some moisture, but not that much, so mango will be somewhere in the middle. And in the wettest areas, we are going to have things like bananas. Yeah, that's the size comparison, people. Banana is that small and compared to a nice fully grown jackfruit tree. Now this should give you some ideas already. By taking all that water and concentrating it in one area, you are going to have, and again taking all that water and concentrating that water here, you are going to create diversity of trees that you can grow, which give you the essential resilience for your forest garden. So I was talking about selecting climates based on, trees based on the climate that you live. Many people think that you only grow trees that grow locally, natively. No. You're going to do slight engineering that will give you an access to a bigger biome, a bigger bioregion, and that is essentially gives you a market advantage. It gives you a nutritional advantage, and it gives you resilience, flexibility and resilience. This is very important to understand. Now, how do we take all that water and concentrate here? A simple strategy. Almost everybody who has heard of permaculture nowadays knows this, thanks to Jeff Lawton. We take, this is a soil surface, we dig a trench there and put that mud all over here. This is called a swale. We take mud from here, make a trench like that and put it on the top side very loosely and plant trees here and here. Where to plant what? That's a slightly longer discussion, but generally the idea is that the water will flow here, will get collected in this, get soaked in the mound. Therefore you have concentrated water resource. Therefore the trees here are more drought tolerant, they will survive longer. You can plant slightly those trees that require slightly more rainfall than you have, and this area will have normal infiltration, and you will plant trees, and over a period of time, once these are established, their roots are deep enough that the swale really doesn't matter after the trees have established themselves, and the soil here has become loose over the years because of the biological activity thanks to the trees, and water will start soaking in here also, so your overall farm has become more fertile and stable. I hope I am giving a decent enough idea as to how to think about establishing a food forest. I hope you people are understanding all my scribbles here and they are making sense. I am going to take a break once again and offer the mic to Sai Prasanna Kumar for one more minute and ask him again 2 questions, right? Explain, this is for Sai, right? Explain please the fungal root net, fungal net. Explain the fungal net please. While I take a break, because when I come back, this is going to play a massive role in how we do our forest gardens, how we establish the forest gardens. Once you get all these basics down, you will see how easy it is to really go about planting a food forest. Off to Sai in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Uh, okay, so I'm back again. Now, DJ was talking about how we need to build in the soil biology and how soil biology is what actually gives the fertility to the soil. Now, many people have very different ways in which they understand, but essentially the point is that if you have good soil biology, if you have bacteria and fungal microorganisms in your soil, you would be having lot of life, so to say. So thinking of soil as some kind of inorganic, inert material just there for the trees to be on something is a very wrong way of looking at it. Dr. Elaine Ingham actually puts it very beautifully. She says that you go to a garden and what you hold is soil, and probably a bit of it rubs onto your shirt or to your trousers. And by the time you come back inside, what you have on your shirt is not mud, it's not soil, it is dirt. And the difference between dirt and soil is dirt has no life, whereas soil has all the life. Uh, so um, the main point regarding these microorganisms is that you know now that you should have bacteria and fungal and fungus in your soil, and there are different measures of both of them which you would be requiring for different types of soil. What I mean by this is that if you start observing the soil layer, it would be having a different composition of bacteria and fungus, and your agricultural soil should be having a different composition of bacteria and fungus. But even before that, what is fungus? Now, some of you, or quite quite many of you, would have seen mushroom. Now, mushrooms are nothing but the fruit of fungus. And what happens is that beneath the soil, there is this layer which spreads and can spread across huge distances, lots and lots and lots of kilometers and acreage it can spread, and that is known as the mycelium layer. Now, mentioned it a bit briefly in my previous hangout, and I said that that is very important. Now, what that mycelium layer, that is that underground fungal layer which spreads, what it does is that it starts um, transporting nutrients from one place to another. So there is basically a kind of symbiosis happening. The fungus requires sugars, which it obtains from the plants. And in return, what it does is that it will bring for the plant or for the tree nutrients whenever the plant or the tree is in short of it. So it is going to basically travel all over and send you back the nutrients. And it is called the highway of the soil because that's how all the nutrients are transported. So, in a forest like situation, if you don't have fungus, if you don't have this layer, uh, you essentially cannot have a forest. And what happens is that if you are regularly trampling and walking on soil, you essentially start compacting the soil. And once you compact the soil, you are actually hurting the fungus layer. And that is why you see that the soil which becomes very hard by regular compaction. You might have a path just outside your house where you're regularly walking, and initially you would see that some grass would want to come, and very soon you can actually see just like a bald head, the whole area is clear and nothing can grow there. It might rain, still you won't find any kind of growth there because now that is actually dirt. It is not soil. There is absolutely no life in it. So this fungus layer, what I was initially saying, just to complete the loop, you require that mycelium layer, especially in a forest-like situation, because that is the nature of the soil which is there in a forest. Now, the it, in nature itself, you would be having different kinds of fungal growth and different quantities of it, so to say, in different areas, uh, different places. But in a forest, it is absolutely essential to have a fungus layer. So DJ, do you want me to say anything more on fungus, because this can take quite some time? Because we've been hearing a lot about fungus and lot about forests and agricultural lands in a course that we just completed, Dr. Elaine Ingham's Soil Food Web course, and it was really power packed with the kind of things that it tells you about. And it was an eye opener. Uh, it was a nice addendum to we knew, but it just gave us a lot many more examples and a lot many more proofs to talk to people. DJ, over to you. Yeah.
Back again. I'm back, people. I'm back. Here you go. Sai was talking about the fungal root net, which is extremely important to understand. As Sai was talking about, there is all these fungal network. It's the Jeff Lawton calls it the information highway, the transportation system underneath the soil. Because if there when there is a tree and requires nutrients, these fungi support the nutrients to the tree from as far as 8 to 10 miles. 10 miles away. There are fungal root nets that are that far. The fungi will bring in all that nutrition and give it to the plant in return for some sugars. And this happens naturally in a forest. There was an experiment in there has been an experiment done where in a forest, this a tree, a huge area, almost say 40 rows or 80 rows of trees. That's about 3 acres, 10 acres, whatever. You attack this tree and make a cut in it. What happens is the tree responds with tannins. It's poisons. The tree thinks that it is getting attacked and it wants to put out poisons all over its body so that the pest will not eat it. But surprisingly, within about 1 hour, all these trees produce tannins. Although they were not attacked, they were like 2 acres apart. You have those cucumbers that go bitter. That is because the root system or the plant system has been disturbed and the cucumber has put out tannins to make it bitter so that other things don't eat off its seeds and stuff like that. What they discovered is that through the fungal net and through the air, the plants transferred chemical messages. That's fascinating. Although off topic from your food forest establishment, it kinds of shows the kind of information system that's available below and above the ground in a forest kind of a system, in a tree-based system. There's a small shrub here that requires zinc. One way it will get is from the leaf drop. Another way it gets, or nitrogen fixer, suppose, it is going to get that extra nitrogen through fungi to it. So it is very important to have a healthy soil biology to set up a food forest. You want the biology in place along with your trees and plants. And this is the second step in establishing the forest garden. We have already seen how to think about water. I will talk a little bit more about that when talking about planting trees. But here, let me talk about the soil biology, the fungi particularly. The fungal root net is kind of interesting, and many people don't make this kind of a connection. Even in many videos online, or even in many classes out there, this feeds all the plants and trees. That much everybody knows and everybody explains. But many people fail to mention, even though they understand it, and some people don't understand it, is that these feed the fungal root net. The trees feed the fungal root net. You take off the trees, the fungi die because they don't have sugars to grow. They need that wood, they need all those things, they need sugars to keep on going. And after you take off the trees and kill it off, the fungal root net gets destroyed. Consider the situation where you have an annual monocrop on one side and a large forest system on the other. What do you think is happening with the fungal root net? It will get to some of these things based on the climatic conditions, but it is healthy out here. This is what I was talking about, the biological resilience that a forest garden provides. But this fungal layer is absolutely critical to maintain nutrient cycling. Similarly, there are bacteria there, not just fungi, which perform very similarly based on plants. You take off plants and trees, bacteria die. In annual agriculture system, that happens every time they till it, that happens every time they harvest it, they disturb the land. You are going to lose the essentials of soil. Not no second thought about it. And without this network of fungi and biology, all the nutrition, whatever was accumulated on the surface, leaches out, either this way or through runoff, erosion. It leaches out. Out here, these things will trap all that nutrients, give them back to plants, and plants will give back on the surface, and the cycle keeps on going. And in a forest garden, the soil is full of litter, leaves, small plants that provide surfacial sugar and nutrient cycling to the fungi, which eat which eat this material, which consume this material as part of their biological cycles and convert it into humus, which again becomes plant food. And this is an essential cycle that happens. The leaf litter and litter on the ground is taken by things called macrobiology, macro soil biology, and that is your earthworms, ants, termites, etc., and they convert it into bacterial microbial food, and they convert it back to plant food. And when this cycle is happening, your plants thrive. In fact, there is a study that shows that fungi actually provide water to the plants in drought conditions. The fungi provide moisture. They bring moisture from far away and feed it to the plants to keep them alive, because the more the plants are alive, they produce sugars through photosynthesis in their leaves from sunlight and bring it back through the roots. Many people only consider roots to be pumps that take water above, but the other way is also true. They put back sugars into the soil. A good tree will put almost 80% of all the sugars it produces back into the soil and feeds a healthy microbial life. And that is an essential thing to understand in establishing and maintaining a forest garden. You want the right kind of soil biology developing in your soil systems. Now, to do that, one of the most important things is to add organic matter to the soil, either as compost, as mulch, as leftover root matter, as manures, whether you manually put in manure, jivamrutam, etc., or whether you allow birds to do that extra work for you and goats to do that extra work for you. For example, after the fields are plowed, it is very common for allowing goats into the fields, to graze and poop there, to drop their manure there. You want to add organic matter into your soil. Now, when you want to establish your forest garden, where do you get the mulch? Where do you get the compost? Where there is literally hardly any leftover root matter to give. So there is hardly any biology, particularly if that area that you have selected has been overgrazed or compacted, as Sai was talking about, or tilled, or in annual cropping systems. You neither have good biology underneath, nor do you have enough of these to add. So what we go about doing is we start creating our own mulches and compost first. So what we do is we do something called the pioneers. These are the essential trees and plants that condition the soil. in extremely poor situations, we actually add in the biology either through compost tea or by inoculating the soil with the microbes, the azobacters and lactobacter, not lactobacters, azobacters and the rhizobium root connections that are there for various plants. So what you do is you put in lots and lots and lots of soil building plants, shrubs and trees. An example of them will be subabul. This is lucina. You'll have cowpea. You'll have crotalaria. This is janamu in Telugu. You will have your jiluga, daincha. You will have all these kinds of extremely nitrogen fixing and soil fertility trees. You can have pulses. You can have horse gram. And in trees, you can go with various acacias, various cassia type trees, cassia plants. Many of them are nitrogen fixers. You will select trees that are going to do a heavy leaf drop. Now, when you get a piece of land, if it is barren, you're already in a terrible situation, but usually some grass or some other weed is growing. But once you start setting these things up, you will start seeing reduced weed problems, and weeds become kind of your friends. They'll tell you when your soil is dry, they'll tell you when your soil is exhausted, they'll tell you when the soil is too disturbed or too compacted, and let you plant those things later on down the line in your forest gardens to to make the place more healthy. You'll stop hating what we call weeds. Yeah, in the initial years, when the soil biology is not right and when the mulch and other things are not accumulated, you will have lots and lots and lots of weeds. But once you start establishing it, you will start clearing it off. The way I suggest people to do is do one tilling, till the soil once, and immediately sow something called a ground cover. You do it just after the first rain or just before the first rain during monsoons here in Hyderabad, and you will cover the soil with lots of these nitrogen fixers and other support species plants that start giving you mulch, etc. So how you do that is that you will plant a lot of ground cover on the ground, and all your crotalaria junkia and your jiluga and all your tiny nitrogen fixers are all there. And among them, if your soil is good already and you have good water retention and irrigation, you will plant your fruit trees. Otherwise, you will wait for a year, for a season to pass before you start putting in your actual fruit trees and forest trees. So once you have these growing, you can cut them off and put them down and grow the organic matter on the soil, and that kickstarts the fungal connections underneath the soil. The microbial life is kickstarted. So this is the most essential step in establishing your forest garden. Once the microbial life starts, you put in a plant, it will be taken up as a family member by these microbes, and they will give the plant all the required nutrition. Now, of course, if you're in a desert situation, you can't grow that many of these, so you'll go with simple large trees that first shade the soil so that there is less evaporation, and then you'll start collecting mulches and putting them on top. But in most other situations, in most situations where there is annual cropping of one kind or the other, you can grow many of these what are called support species. So you first go with your support species, and in your support species you have plants and shrubs that are very short term, and you will have trees that go all the way to very long term. You will have trees that keep on dropping great mulch every year for the next 60-80 years. There is acacia lebec, acacia alcocarpa. There are beautiful trees all around the place. You will go with things like neem, Azadirachta indica, neem tree, here and there to help balance out the toxins in the soil, and also as a good support tree. You will have trees that are all these that range from very short term to very long term. You'll have lots of very short term trees and a few of very long term ones, and you'll have something in the middle. What you do is, your nitrogen fixer is growing. You have let me take a top view. This is from looking at the sky. You'll have, for example, a pigeon pea. This is called kandi in Telugu. You'll have a set of those which protect your tiny fruit tree in the middle, your star of your forest garden, from hot winds in summer. In Hyderabad, this is the west direction. You will put your pigeon pea there, and they kind of nurse the star of your garden, the fruit tree. These trees then usually are called nurse trees, nurse plants, nurse trees, because they nurse the fruit trees till they mature. But these live for about 6 months, and by the time this is tall enough, you would want even taller support species. So you'll go with a thicket of nitrogen fixing Jiluga, Daincha, or Janmu crotalaria all around it. So they provide the next layer of support, and these are died off, so this plant has enough space to grow. And all this time there is this ground cover going, which is nitrogen fixing. But once these trees start establishing, in the second season possibly, you will start putting in productive ground covers. Things like sweet potato, which will give you a yield from this layer of a food forest. This is one layer of a forest. This is the canopy layer. Many of you know this already. I will talk about the layers in a minute. But what we are starting to do here is provide the microclimate required for growing good fruit trees. Now you go to a fruit tree nursery, you will have shade nets, these green cloths, plastic sheets that allow partial sunlight to the fruit trees, and they protect the fruit trees from drying out. Now here you can do that with natural trees. You don't need to buy any shade net with thousands and thousands of rupees. You can create a similar situation very easily by broadcasting. You don't even need to sow the seeds. You broadcast the seeds on the soil, and they will take root, most of them. A good way to go about it is till the soil, loosen the soil once, very shallow, 6 inches, half feet tilling. Only once you will do that when establishing a food forest. Initially, if the soil is very, very hard, then you will broadcast the seeds. The seeds are all on top of the surface. Then what you do is you take your tractor or your buffalo, cow, whatever I'm trying to draw here, and behind it you will tie a tree, a shrub, a dead shrub, like that, and get it to walk around the place, back and forth. And what it does is it kind of puts dirt on all these seeds. Just drag it. In Telugu it is called manda lagadam, and you do that once, and all these seeds get buried, and they will take root and they'll start growing. Once they start growing, you have kick-started your microbial activity, and you have started growing biomass that you can add to the soil. Now, where does this biomass come from? It is taking CO2 from the atmosphere. All these plants, they are taking CO2. Now, something beautiful you can do here, you can grow a combination of fodder plants, things like Crotalaria junkia, which are given as fodder to cows, goats, and sheep, and buffaloes, and all of that, along with other perennial ground covers, and you can start having a yield right away. But once the soil starts becoming better, the roots here will be there, and when you're chopping and dropping, you're not going to uproot this. No uprooting. important. Keep the roots in there because they act like corridors, where the root, after you have taken off the plant, the root remains in the soil. Let it remain in the soil. If it regrows, all the good for you, because you have more biomass growing which you can cut down and put down on the soil. You're growing your own fertility there. But if it dies, this all this root mass is going to rot and create passageways for rain. They create food for microbes, and they become eventually excellent compost in the soil, excellent humus in the soil. So keep them there, and this is the first year of your forest garden. If you have irrigation, you will plant your fruit trees then. If you don't, you will go to the strategies that we discussed here in the form of a swale uh, up above here. You remember how we concentrate all the water in one area? You do stuff like that. There are other techniques that I'm going to show you now. When planting trees, after you have accumulated your mulches and after your soil biology has started, you can go in and dig in a pit that's about a meter deep in very dry areas. Fill the bottom with compost up till half of it, and plant your tree in it, and cut down the edges. For instance, it's just a rough theoretical scheme to help you understand what you need to do. And after that, what starts happening is that, and put that soil on top here around the plant and mulch it heavily. After that, whenever rain falls, all the water on the surface is going to get concentrated here and provide your plant with excellent success rate even after planting, even during the summer. You might want to give, in Hyderabadi conditions, you might want to take care of your plants, give them water once every month during the hot summer seasons initially. That is very, very important. If you take good care of your trees for the first 2 years, for the first 2 years, you have 100 years of abundance ahead of you. And that's a beautiful trade-off, right? So you will have scenarios where you can direct excess water from your house, all the bath water, etc., into your forest gardens. There are situations where you can dig a pond with water and use that water to give water to your trees and treelings, saplings during summer, or you can have drip irrigation, or you can have a borewell. Initially, for first 2 years, you would want to keep the plants and trees well taken care of, because once they are healthy, that also means that the soil biology is getting healthy. And that is very, very important. This is the initial time and effort investment you do in a forest garden. And the better you do this, the better your forest garden thrives. Now, if you have excess water, say the water from your dishes, your washing machines, and your bathing, etc., if you have that extra water, you would go with very short-term plants like bananas and papayas that give you a yield in 1 year. So the forest gardening area is not all lost to the farmer, right? You don't want, a subsistence farmer cannot wait without growing anything productive on an area. He simply can't survive in the poverty that he has. He has to make some money out of it. So one way to do it is to grow plants that keep giving yields every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, every 1 year, every 2 years. And after that, after 4 years, all your fruit trees are yielding and you are through. How do you do that? When you're planting, select areas for your trees. Grow the mulch, etc., all around it. But in the middle, you can have your vegetable crops. You can have sweet potatoes and other things. You can grow fodder here that you can sell. You can put annual gardens along with your trees initially if you want to maintain a steady income source. But after 3 months, among these things, you will have your papayas. and that will shade out these annual crops. For example, I will suggest something here. You plant your papaya tree on in a ditch on a mound. This is important. Papaya tree does not like wet feet. It gets rotten if there is too much water. So you dig a pit in the soil and create a small mound inside the pit and put your papaya there. So the roots are here. Water is still being given to the papaya through rains. Excess water is getting collected in this, but the roots are still pretty free from wetness. But the base of the tree is pretty free from wetness, so it doesn't rot. Now around this you put your mulch. Around this you will put all the diverse elements, diversity of flowers, of trees, beneficial insect attractors. Along with that, you can plant in your corn. You can plant in your uh, sweet potatoes, your turmerics. Turmeric is a great one to start off a food forest. If you have the right conditions, you can go with ginger. And I don't want to go too deep into this because I don't want to give wrong species advice to people. Just check out what your local farmers are growing and what they do, and based on that, slightly far away from the papaya, you can start putting your, for example, turmeric in there, and that kind of prevents bad fungi and bad bacteria to grow in your soil and gives a boost to healthy soil microbiology, and it also gives a yield. You can plant potato, you can plant onion, you can plant leafy greens out there, and it kind of gives you that extra added income. Then in 6 months you will have things like cotton. You can have cotton plantation there, and it will provide a yield for you. And in 1 year your bananas will yield for you, and in 2 years your papayas will finish off their yield. They'll start at around 8 months, 6 months sometimes, and yield up till 2 years. And you go with one more cycle of these things till your fruit trees are fully mature, and then your forest garden is ready and producing income as well as food for you. Now how do you do this? Here is your forest garden floor. You have grown or brought in mulch, or you are going with ground covers here. You plant you fully plant your ground covers. Just fill the place with ground cover. Then you select your bananas and papayas and put them in where there is more water, and make sure that you cut channels if you are hand watering it around places where you put in bananas. You can go with ideas like banana circles and papaya circles. I will cover that in some other webinar. Already this is a complicated subject in itself for 3 hours, but you put in your banana pups, and slightly far away you put in your papayas, and in the middle you can grow your cotton, corn, turmeric, etc. Right? You put this in your bananas wherever you see that there is a chance of that. Now you don't want wind breaking these, so you'd want woody plants that will stay strong and prevent your bananas from blowing over. I will typically plant Lucina here, that grows pretty fast and provides a wind buffer to your banana plants even for 1-2 years. And generally we don't take off our banana plants. They keep on giving pups, and they are more perennial for us, and they keep on giving yield year after year after year. And your papayas will grow for a few years and then die off or become too unproductive, and you will replace them. But among these you will put your mangoes, your sitafal, etc. So what happens in 3 months? In 3 months you have your corn ready. All between these, a bit of corn here and bananas and fruit trees, and it goes on. You can harvest corn, you can harvest some of the ground cover, you can harvest your potato, you can harvest stuff like that. In 4 months to 6 months you can harvest your turmeric, and then this area has become empty. Therefore there is enough space for your banana to become big and it is not shedding anything out. For a second crop, I'll go for greens. They don't require full sun. They will grow beautifully underneath your bananas and papayas. So in 4 months, the green leafy vegetables, spinach, coriander. Coriander is a great one because it does not require too much water. Extremely good, even with one watering initially, it still does beautifully. So for the next 3 months, before my papaya starts yielding, I have green crop. But once the papaya starts yielding, I would want to walk around that place to harvest the papaya. So I will fill that place back. After harvesting the greens, I will fill the place back with ground covers. Probably introduce sweet potato then, along with lots of nitrogen fixers. I don't want to overemphasize the importance of mulching, its benefits, because it prevents evaporation and all of that. There's most of you know that. If you don't know that, we will talk about that in a different webinar. However, I want to talk about an important point here, which is what kind of plants you select depends on your climate, as I was talking about. In scrub forests, like in Hyderabad, you want woody mulch. You want lots of woody mulch. Why? Because that is the type of shrub growth you see naturally here. That is, because of the hot summers here and lack of water, you don't want herbaceous mulch here. It gets rotten very quickly, it becomes dry very quickly, it does not grow well, your ground cover fails if you don't irrigate it, and all those problems. But if you have woody plants, tangedu, the state tree of Telangana, cassia, it's a cassia, cassia auriculata, Sai is suggesting, or you can go with cassia senna. It's a medicinal plant that can be harvested and sold, and it's a nitrogen fixer. But it is essentially woody. You want woody material on your ground, and woody material will give your fungi the right kind of food, and that's exactly what you want. So those are the type of mulch plants you put. You take all your annual crop residue and put it back on the soil as mulch, so you're not losing too much nutrient there. Now after your 6 months, 8 months, your papayas and banana start yielding. Papaya will not stop yielding for 2 years. Every few months you'll have a huge harvest of papaya. In our forest garden we had more than 100 fruit from just 5 trees on a regular basis. I'm not saying the total harvest. Yeah, there are photos on my Facebook page. Link will be provided here for our forest gardens. We had tremendous amount of papaya production and banana production while our fruit trees were growing. That's the beauty of it. You are getting yield after yield after yield while your forest garden grows. But all the crop residues, all the dead leaves, etc., are going back to the soil to add organic matter to the forest floor. All this time, underneath the ground, the roots are growing and loosening the soil and giving food to all the microbes. And every time you harvest the tops, the bottom ones are becoming compost. And very soon, in a matter of 2 to 3 years, if you do this right, you will be left with abundance of great soil. 6 to 8 inches of topsoil is tremendous in Hyderabad, because most of our fertility lies in the trees. That is another important point. In tropical climates, the fertility is above ground. 60% of fertility is above ground. Now after 2 years, your fruit trees are now as tall as bananas. And what we did in our forest gardens was, at that time the bananas were dominating the fruit trees. So we came, chopped down the bananas, cut down the bananas, and the fruit trees had full sunlight. But the bananas don't die if you cut them off. They put out new pups. And the next year the bananas were up. We will chop some of them to prevent fruit trees from getting damaged. But now my forest garden has fruit trees already above the banana layer, and the banana is not going to do anything to the fruit trees. So now, right now, after 3 years, almost 3 years of my forest garden, this is how it looks. There are these custard apples and stuff like that going there, and my pomegranate growing like shrub, and my bananas are right there in the middle, and I have papayas growing out of the woody. This one is woody, right? The pomegranate is a woody plant. I have about literally 2 feet of gap between my pomegranates and papayas, and they are taking up a niche above the papaya, above the pomegranate, and I have a dense, highly productive system. And underneath, I have ground covers and mulch covering all my forest garden floor. And a few days ago, we dug a pit to plant a few extra bananas. My bananas fell over because of the extreme high winds we had, and the soil was moist inside, full of fungi, and it smelled absolutely beautiful. And most importantly, it was loose. It was loose, pretty loose, up till it was very friable up till about say 10 inches, 12 inches. But then it was slightly harder, but it is still classified as a very loose, friable soil up to 2.5 feet. I dug the hole. Madhu helped me do this a few months ago. Just after the summer, we dug the hole, and after the first rain, we want to see the infiltration and the soil color. So we dug a pit. We want to see how much water actually soaked in. So we dug a pit. And it was moist till 2.5 feet. It was as moist as if it was watered the day before, thoroughly watered. And once you have that, you have abundance on your hands, right? Now, during establishment phase, you are selecting, let me take a different color for nitrogen fixers. For example, I have subabul that grows very fast and provides a windbreak all over the place. I have subabul. It's an invasive self-seeding plant, which is the kind I love in my forest gardens, because I have so many plants that it does not have a chance to become invasive. In my forest gardens, there is so much ground cover. There are so many plants already on the ground. There are no empty spaces for extra Leucaena to keep coming up. So every now and then a few plants come up and they provide mulch. What I do is I cut them off, and all the extra plants and trees, I chop them off. It's called chop and drop, and put them right there as mulch to fruit trees. Think of that as opposed to what you are doing on your annual crops. You have your annual crop. You will cut it, take all that off. Usually it's burnt, then plow it once again, then add manure, add fertilizers, irrigate it, seed it. When it is growing, add more fertilizer. And there are going to be pests, there are going to be diseases, because your soil biology is dead. All the bad ones are remaining there, which are waiting to have a buffet. So you need pesticide applications, and you will do prayers, and you will take loans, and you will not have a holiday, and you are stressed. And then the harvest time comes, and when you harvest it, all of this is gone. It's as if it has never happened, and you are back to the starting phase again. Here I am getting yields just like an annual garden, but my manure is getting, my fertility is growing right where it needs to be. My plants are forming beneficial connections with the soil biology, which actually gives the nutrition to the plants. I have never added any inorganic fertilizer. Initially, when setting up, I did put in vermicompost and manure, because the kind of soil I got to establish a food forest, you would not want your worst enemy to have, right? It was bare, it was compacted, so we dug, the boys did back breaking work to loosen the soil and do all this work. But in 3 years, your fruit trees and papayas, you will plant your papayas once again, right? After 1 year, you will plant your papayas. After you take off your greens, you will fill that space back, and your cotton and corn and turmeric, you will fill that place back with papayas. And if you have water, that is, if you have irrigation, and papayas will yield for the second year, third year, and by the time they finish off, your fruit trees, your mangoes, your sitafal, your guavas, your pomegranates are all in full production, and you have a beautiful forest garden. And in the end, if you do this right, this is how it will look. You'll have a nice, large, sparse shade or speckled shade nitrogen fixer. Underneath it, this is about, say, 20 meters to 40 meters high. And underneath it, you have your thick mango. And because nothing grows in its shade, you're putting logs there, and you're growing mushrooms, or you're growing, you have your chicken shed there underneath it, or your nursery there, or your beehive. You can put mushrooms. Cultivation, you have bees, honey bees. You can have nursery. You can have chickens, or you can have grazing animals, goats, etc. Occasionally visiting it, very occasionally, once every year, I would say. They can run around. You can have free range chicken. Underneath, this is after 6 to 7 years. And then you have your lanky nitrogen fixers growing there. You'll have your bamboo, and you have your path here. This is a path, and on the side of the path you have bamboos, tall bamboos growing, and they will prevent the path from getting grass. All their mulch is on the ground, and it prevents any grass from growing. Your path is beautiful, and climbing onto your bamboos from slightly far away is your various climbers. Your Malabar spinach is a good one. Beetle leaf is another good one. If you are in the appropriate climate, you can have climbers of peppers and other things going on, which are, you have to look for what grows well with bamboo. You can have root crops growing. That's a very interesting way to control bamboo from becoming invasive. That is, if you plant bamboo here, all around it you will plant root crops, and between the bamboo and roof crops you will plant lemongrass and vetiver. Plant it densely, lemongrass and vetiver. They will stop your bamboo from becoming invasive, and around it you have root crops. And every time you dig for root crops, you see any bamboo roots or any lemongrass or whatever roots growing there, you will disturb them, and that way the whole thing is kept neat and nice and nothing gets invasive. And beyond that, because this bamboo provides kind of a windbreak, you have your still papayas, and which are growing alongside your guavas. And on this side you have some shrub that grows well in shade. Say pomegranate is growing there, or some medicinal plant is growing there. There is another climber going up. Then there is tapioca, karrapendalam in Telugu, growing. And in the wet boggy spaces you have put in a water body that fills up every rainy season, and after that it becomes dry, and there is growing your grasses, water based grasses, which attract dragonflies, frogs, etc., that will eat off any pests that are attacking your fruit trees. And if you want, you can design it in such a way by spacing the plants. By putting the trees in clumps and giving space, you can favor, for example, papaya production. You can have more space given off to papayas and bananas and less space for these thick clumps of forest. Your papaya forest, Kadalivanam. Have you heard of that? It's a mythical place near Srisalem, and that is where goddess Lakshmi stays. Kadalivana Vana is a mythical place. Kadali means it is banana. It's a place where banana grows. It's a banana grove, literally. So you can favor your structure of your forest garden to give more space for your papayas and bananas, and with an occasional nitrogen fixing tree or even a tall tree like coconut growing on top of it. So here out of this is growing coconuts and palm trees, coconut palm and other palm trees. Imagine the amount of fertility, amount of productivity that can happen, and you literally don't have to till, fertilize, or do any of that, and you are getting a stable income even during the weather patterns change. This is the basic understanding of how to establish a food garden, food forest. Let me quickly recap and give it in a methodical fashion. You will plant lots of support trees and ground cover. You will do that based on short term to very long term. And after the short term dies, your fruit trees and other productive trees are taking up that space. And there are plants like subabul that you will purposefully, this is a nitrogen fixing subabul, let's say you will cut it off and put it down and use it as mulch and as a nitrogen addition to the soil, as a mineral addition to the soil, and that space will be empty for your fruit tree to take up. And over the period of time, your lots of support trees are gone, a few are left, and your entire forest garden is filled with all beneficial, medicinal, fodder giving, fruit giving, food giving plants and trees. And what are you left with? You are left with a lake. A forest is an above ground lake because almost all living beings are full of water. We are 70% water. A tree is 70% water. There are trees and plants that are 90% water. Their fruits are water. And all those trees are pumps. They are getting in water up through their leaves to the clouds. They are maintaining and managing and moderating ground temperatures. They are cooling off wind. They are stopping dust from going away. They are providing habitat. And they are providing water in the form of their leaves and trees and their fruits and flowers to bees, birds, and people during the dry summers. What more can you ask for in a land? I hope I have made clear on the ways to think about establishing a forest garden. I have a couple of things to talk about: how to plant trees here. I will talk about that, and I will talk a little bit about managing the forest garden, and I will talk about specific scenarios like urban, where you have a lot more people to deal with, and the way you can select trees and plants for your forest garden. I will talk about that, but in the meanwhile, let me throw it back to Gardens of Abundance, Sai Prasanna Kumar, to answer one more of my questions. And this time the question is, can you please explain, although you have done that in the last webinar, please repeat it briefly, the 7 layers of a food forest, while I take a small break. Any questions, please put them in the chat, people, And one other thing, there are people who are saying nonsense about forest gardens, that they are not as productive and all of that. I will talk about the dumbness of that when I come back, because that's an important issue and I would like to tackle it in this webinar, because it gives people the ammunition required to counter these arguments that are completely, false and not applicable in most cases. Sometimes they are right, and I'll talk about that also. Now, back to Sai Prasanna Kumar.
Oh, so I just realized that I was muted. Let me just show you these things again. One sec. So this is the 7 layers in a forest. The same slide that I shared last week. Now, what you can see here is that you have different types of trees and shrubs and herbs and other stuff. And the most prominent thing that you can see here is that they are at different heights. So what is happening is that you have in a forest, you have certain trees which are at the top of everything else. Now you would be calling them as overstory. Then you have some trees which are below that level, then some which are even below that level. Then you have shrubs, woody shrubs. Then below that layer you have your herbs and things like spinach. I mean, not in a forest, but just to get a idea of the height that it would be. And then going down further, you would have even smaller things which are just covering the ground completely. And you have your root crops, which would be actually under the ground. And climbing onto your trees, you would be having your creepers. So if you look at forest in this way, you would actually observe 7 layers. Now, uh, depending on where you are, because the first thing that we are looking is the climate that you are in. If you are in temperate sort of a climate, you probably would be having about 5 layers which are prominent. In a tropical area, you might even be having 9 to 11 layers. So it really depends on the place where you are, but essentially, what you see in a forest is stacking of trees and plants and shrubs one over the other, in such a way that each level, or in a certain sense, you could call it a trophic level, each level is being utilized fully. So you have that stacking one over the other, then you also have time by stacking. Now, if you see a forest from outside, if you are seeing the aerial view, you would just be seeing those trees which are at the highest level. But inside this, all these layers are being maintained. So some people go on to say that even birds and animals which are there as a part of forest should also be included, because forest is not just trees. Uh, like they say, missing the forest for the trees. Forest is not just trees, you have plants, you have animal life, you have soil life, as DJ has been discussing. So, and we also have mycelium, as Paul Stamets says. So, we have all these things which are working in a forest, all these levels which are being maintained, and it is in because you have these kind of levels, you start seeing is that there are lots and lots of different connections which are possible. So because there are those top canopy trees, they are actually allowing certain other trees to come in their shade, and then you have something else which is coming in its shade. So that is just one way of looking at how the trees would be coming. Then based on the different functions that each tree or plant would be performing based on the level at it is. And you might be surprised, but in tropical forests, you have such a wide growth or such a prolific growth. Usually the movies that you see, most of the Hollywood movies usually seem to show Amazon rainforest type of forests. So you see that prolific growth with all these venomous insects and mosquitoes and all that. There, the growth is so prolific that you have trees on top of trees. So literally, nothing falls directly over to the soil. In some cases, it just keeps on falling over trees and trees, and you have tree coming over another tree, and like that you have these different types of forests based on the climate. But when you look at, as I was saying initially also, when you look at the resilience, when you look at it in a permaculture way, it is because of these layers that you are having productivity and surplus being generated at each level, and all these levels together create even more productivity, because whole is more than the sum of its parts. Each tree isolated, when you isolate it, as they try to do in certain agricultural systems where you have only one particular tree being grown prominently for fruit or for some other this thing, you are actually missing out uh, on the other species which could have benefited from the tree that you have planted, and some other trees which would have given uh, which would have helped this tree. So uh, look at the picture of a forest. I'll just show you this again. Now see this in the slide so that you can now see here that you have the topmost layer that is being mentioned. One, that is the canopy, that is your large fruit and nut tree. Then at the second level, now this is what they have implemented for a forest garden. So that's why you are finding examples which are essentially human based. So you have the first canopy layer, which could be your large fruit and nut trees. Then you have your second low tree layer, dwarf fruit trees. Then you have the third shrub layer, currants and berries. Then your fourth layer is your herbaceous layer. Your fifth layer is rhizophyre root crops. Then you have sixth, the soil surface, ground cover crops, as I was saying. Then you have your seventh vertical layer, climbers and vines. Uh, there might be slight differences in the photo that you might come across on the internet, but essentially there are all these different layers, might be named a bit differently, but this is what a forest is all about. So I'll hand it over to DJ, and we'll continue from there.
I'm back again. Uh, Let me get back my drawing board here for a minute. It is important to understand uh, all those things we have spoken about. There is one study that was done because there are these statements by extremely intelligent people that forest gardens are very yeah, forest gardens are very productive, and this pissed off a lot of agriculturists, and they conducted an experiment. They took a forest, a natural forest, and they compared it with a natural cropland, and the cropland produced more food definitely than a natural forest. Then um, they said, oh, natural forest is not that productive. Okay, what about an orchard? In a mango orchard, you have mango trees pretty far apart, and they calculated the amount of food produced compared it with a cornfield or a wheat field, and the wheat field easily outperformed the orchard. Then they tested it on a permaculture forest garden, and again the farmland outproduced food compared to a food forest. It outproduced almost 3 times. It created more food. The normal farm produced more food than a forest garden, and they said, "Oh, see, food forests are not very productive." So that's a bad strategy. But what they failed to understand is the amount of labor put in, the amount of fluctuations they had, and they had ideal irrigation. In all these scientific tests, these people do not simply understand that we live in a real world, and they create what are called experimental conditions, and they experiment. Yeah, in experimental conditions, I can make a dog yield an elephant, right? You can do anything you want based on the conditions you want. You set it up. They irrigated the fields. They did not test it over drought years and long periods of time, and all of that. And they put in lots of labor, lots and lots of labor, and tractors and tilling. What they forgot is that all that extra yield they got is at the cost of soil fertility, labor, input costs, and all they were getting was food. Whereas from our forest garden, the little meager, very humble 150, 167, I think, square yards of food forest, we get, as I mentioned earlier, we have so many poles for trellis for our other gardens that we are unable to use them. We can use it as firewood. I will talk about that in a minute. We got wood, we got mulch, we got soil biology. We did not irrigate, no irrigation, and we spent hardly say 200 hours, man hours, or women hours if you want a more feminist term there. 200 hours. Compare that to a normal garden where you're spending at least a few hours every week. 200 hours, this includes establishment, by the way, and maintenance. For example, in the last 2 years, only 1 or 2 people entered my forest gardens to do any maintenance. Even 5 or 6 of us went in for half an hour bursts, that too once every 6 months, 3 months, 4 months. Usually harvest is done by one person and in a matter of an hour. So 200 hours including establishment. And compare that with any garden, any normal farm, and the trade-off is tremendous. You don't get any of those. In these, you might get a bit of mulch here, you might get a bit of fuel, but that's about it. Whereas in this system, you get a lot more productivity, not just food. Because in farms, they have lost soil fertility, so they add it in. They put in a lot more work and labor. They give in a lot more input costs. You don't need that in a forest garden. Yeah, an orchard is equally bad because it's very susceptible to pests, diseases, and it is sparsely placed very far apart, lots of empty spaces, etc. Now, if you have a mango orchard or any other orchard, you can convert it into a food forest because you already have established trees. Probably you might take 1 or 2 of them out and establish more useful trees like nitrogen fixers and support species. You can increase the diversity, make the farm more resilient, dig trenches, capture water where it is strategically more important, and you can create all the 7 layers from an orchard most of the times. But and make it more resilient and make it more productive. So this is one of the things that is out there on the internet, floating around on the internet, where in experimental conditions a farm outproduced a forest garden, which is technically impossible, because on a flat piece of ground, if you have corn growing, the amount of sunlight used, the amount of photosynthesis happens is just this much. That is the leaf area. Whereas in a forest garden, a typically large tree will have 40 acres of surface area. Compare that. That is how much photosynthesis that can happen in a forest garden, because the forest garden is not like this, it is like that. That is the amount of photosynthesis that can happen there. That is the amount of biomass produced. That is the amount of natural abundance that is possible. And for example, if you add in a rocket stove, which is a non-polluting wood stove, if you do that, you can get all your cooking needs from your forest garden. Or you can have a wood gasifier. You can do that. There is one person in Bhadrachalam, I am not sure of his name. His name is something like Surya Kumar or Surya Pratap Reddy. I am not really sure of that, because I heard and forgot. He has 5 mahua trees. That is Madhuka indica. That is Ippa in Telugu. Ippa Chettu. And around Bhadrachalam, and he is using the IPA to make biofuel to run all his farm equipment. He has got a special device made as an attachment to his diesel tractor, which will take in this fuel into the carburetor, and it's an addition to the carburetor he made, and he runs all his equipment just based on 5 trees. And no petrol cost for his tractor, no nonsense. Imagine that, right? And these people who did experiments did not count any of that. They only looked at how many calories of food that were produced. They forgot that you get all these, you need all these yields, because you get all your paddy and wheat, and what do you cook it on, right? You can't cook it on much else. Maybe the farm residue you want to burn, but that's not very efficient, and that's not that much. Whereas compared to, you know, if I get the grass from wheat from my 150 square yards, that is not even equal in weight or in burning capacity to the couple of casuarina trees or subab trees that I chopped off, that gave me extra poles and sticks for my firewood. They burn more efficiently, they are more carbon rich, all of that. Now, saying that, let's get back to establishing the forest garden. The forest garden, when you look at it, when you want to establish it in this area, there are edges, right? How many edges are here? Technically, by the drawing, you have 2, right? This boundary and this boundary. If you look at it from a top view, there is the boundary edge. In permaculture, we enhance the amount of edges that are there, because the conditions favor particular type of plants to thrive in edges. There are these plants, for example, there's a big tree. Let me draw a top view, and this is a big mango tree, let's say, and nothing grows in its shade, but all through this edge, right, it can grow beautiful shade loving, semi-shade loving plants, and you can have 300, 200, 150, depending on the size of the plant, all around your mango tree. In the afternoon, these things will get the sun. In the mornings, these things will get the sun, and you have a beautiful system, and it is happening on the edge of the mango tree, which is providing the exact requirements for that plant, and you are maximizing the use of sunlight there. So if you look at a forest garden plan, you will look at how to plant the trees, in what pattern you want to plant the trees. Is it like this? These are your main trees, main market trees, let's say sapota and mango. You would think of where the edge is. For example, this is the harvesting path that you want to take to harvest those, and this is the harvesting path that you take to harvest these. Now you can plant your fodder grasses all around the path here. Just giving you an example here, not to be literally taken, but just to give you a way to think. Forest grasses, fodder grasses, and you have your cow. Where will it go? The cow will walk along the path, keep on eating the grasses and going away. If you put a small fence there, it will not eat your trees, but it will keep on eating these grasses. Actually, this is an idea I got when talking about his own farm with Srinu Ale. He is in chat right now. We were discussing about his farm, and he actually kind of came up with this idea because cows trample and compact the ground. It's not usually good to have cows compacting everywhere, but your path, the more it is compacted, the more stable it is. The more sturdy it is, the less damaged it gets. So by planting grass all around the path, the cow will be walked all over the path very regularly, all around the paths, and the path becomes stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and it doesn't get eroded. And you have a nice path where you are collecting the manure and stuff like that, rather than manure being everywhere on the forest garden. Now by cleverly designing systems like these, you can get far more productivity with far less labor and input costs in your forest garden. Now you would want not just mangoes and sapote, but you want sitafal. So you will plant sitafal there, right? And you will plant your coconut in the middle, for example. Now this is a triangle pattern, a typical triangle pattern, an example about planting a food forest. You need not go this way. You can go with your typical squares and plant coconuts here, and plant another tiny shrub plant like your custard apple, sitafal, in the middle. And in the middle here, you keep on putting your nitrogen fixers, your turmerics, your mustards. You can have whatever you want underneath, and the amount of productivity is out of the roof. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I was talking about a swale. You can even do it by creating a depression in the land like this. Just a small pit, say 1 or 2 feet deep, gradually sloping towards the edges. That is, all the water here, surplus water, would collect in this, and makes this area very, very rich in having extra water. And towards the center, you would plant your jackfruits and all your water loving plants, and all this edge of water gives you all that extra space for planting your water loving plants, more, the trees that will take more of a rainfall. And out here you have all your dry trees, drought loving trees. And what happens is these prevent any wind from getting in there. They act as windbreak, and so this area, this water rich area, is much more insulated from evaporation and hot winds. So by applying techniques of creating edges appropriately, you can generate much more comfortable setups. Now coming back to this idea, okay, I'll draw it once again. Now looking at it laterally, you have fences, you have your fruit trees, you have your understory. What else can you do? You can put up a vertical trellis here with poles, like pole, and then tie it with rope or something like that, and or espalier. It's a technique where you will have a fence and you will plant things like guava here, and as they grow, you put the guava around the wires here. You train it like that every day or every week. You go and tie the guava to this fence, and soon you will have your jamakaya. Guava is jama, and you can do espalier with jama. You can do espalier with your uh, custard apple. You can do it with flower plants, and on this you can grow vines that will you have a living trellis there, and you can grow your peas and beans on it during off season, just like a normal trellis, and it will be vertical like that, so it is not affecting any of this. Might cast shade on one side like that in one season, and on the other side on the other season. If you are in tropics, you can increase productivity like that. You can grow cucumbers there. You can grow all kinds of annuals if you want on fences, and thereby you're actually increasing the amount of productivity. You can go with perennial vines like dondakaya, gherkin, gherkins. You can grow gherkins there. You can grow snake gourds. All of that is very possible, and you're not literally losing anything by establishing a food forest. But in the towards the fences, you'll have your windbreak, things that will prevent excess wind from coming, and all of that. You might also want to think, if you have small space in an urban scenario, for example, we here in our garden have on the west side a huge building like that, and this is our forest garden, and here is an empty plot. This is where we have requested the owner, and we used to make compost here to put in that forest garden. Now here the taller trees are on this side, and the shorter trees are here, and my place, if I want any annual gardens, is right here, because all the sunlight is available in this area thoroughly, and this is full of trees, and there's no sunlight from the west, but there is reflected sunlight from the building. Now this is a general pattern I developed for one of the forest gardens I have. Now I am not growing anything annual here. I am letting it go into papaya, planting papayas there. I have let me write papayas there, pomegranates there, sitafal there, this is custard apple, and sapoti there. I have one huge tree here on the north edge. This is west, this is east, so more towards the back, that side of the garden. If you look at it from the top, this is the building on the west, and this is our garden, and this is the empty plot. This is east, this is north. I have a huge badam tree I planted towards the north. Now through the hot summers, it provides a nice shade to all of this area, but in winters and in monsoon it does not provide any shade at all, and gives full production. That gives me a kind of a cool area for my plants to come up. So it is these things you would consider, and we have put in, there's a road here, we grow creepers on the fence all around here like that. This is a wall. We used to grow creepers on the wall, and all these are trees all around the place. The rainwater from this building is channeled here. Let me draw with a different color there. It's channeled here, and here are bananas. Underneath the ground, the water seeps in through the garden over the years, and I have bananas all over the place, and they survive easily without any irrigation. Now, this is one of the types of forest gardens I have put in. Here, let me talk something very important, which is, if you have more time, have plants that give more regular yields. Things like papaya, it yields very regularly. You might want more of them. You might want more of things like kasha kaya. You might want annual veggies growing in there. For example, your bitter gourd, snake gourd, etc. can grow on the fence, and you have more time and more people to take care of it. They can harvest it. If you don't, you will go for once a year trees like mangoes. If you don't even have time for that, for example, you stay in Hyderabad but your farm is some 300 kilometers away and you don't want to go there anytime soon, you will go for more of a timber forest. So that also determines the way you will select the trees. In an urban scenario, I prefer having more of these because the production for these is so far away from the city that it is costing more fossil fuels to bring veggies to your cities. We have rooftop garden for veggies, therefore much of the veggie production is done there, but exotic root vegetables like pendulum, that is a form of a yam, colocaceous, all these things take a long time to mature. They go in my forest garden. I just plant them every year once. I go there, harvest a 40 kilogram, 80 kilogram root from each plant, and that is huge starch input, huge calorie input to my diet. So in cities, I recommend doing more of that. But the farther it is, the less frequent you are going there. You will plant things based on that, based on the yield patterns that they give. It is also important to understand when and how to chop off and create mulch for your garden. In India, in Hyderabad, as I was talking about it, before monsoon and just after the first rain of monsoon, that is when you would want to go, chop off all your extra nitrogen fixers, your nurse plants, and put them on the ground. And during the rains, they will all reproduce and they will all sprout again. And for the summer, they will cover and they will provide shade required to keep the ground cool. For example, subabul is a great example for that. I cut off subabul trees every August. July, August, June, July, August, usually towards July, I go there and cut off most of them. I leave one or two for seeds, huge trees. They will be cut next year. The smaller ones are cut now. They do self-seed and give me more subabul for covering up the ground. But if I chop it in August, by November, they are full of branches and leaves. And by March, which is summer here, you have a nice cool canopy growing there. We have Sesbania grandiflora do that for us. We have Moringa oleifera, which can be done the same way. The more you chop off Moringa in the right season, the more yield it gives. You can add it as a function, and you do it just before your monsoon. And this is very important to understand. This is one of the main maintenance points of a forest garden. You go there, chop off some of the weeds, observe the weeds. If there is grass that is more clumping, you know that the soil there has become bare and is getting eroded. So you'll plant anti-erosion plants there, things that have shallow root nets, things that cover the ground. Gourds, your pumpkins and watermelon and all those things in the appropriate season, or sweet potato, or lemongrass, whatever, all those things you can plant in. You'll observe your weeds, and if you have nitrogen fixing weeds coming up, that means there has been a nitrogen deficiency in the soil. This is also very important to understand. If the soil is lacking potassium, right, potassium is K in NPK, you will have potassium creating fire plants. These are the plants that catch fire during summers, and you have those weeds coming up, and you have a deficiency of this. Then you'll go in with banana compost or mulch, and it balances it out because banana is very high in potassium. But once you see this, or once you see nitrogen lacking, it is those weeds that come up that fix nitrogen. These are all your trees and plants with pods, like your beans. That is a easy way to recognize nitrogen fixing trees. But why do they do that? If there is less nitrogen, why do they grow? The reason is when there is less nitrogen in the soil, there are bacteria in there that would want nitrogen. So they would prefer plants that can give nitrogen to them, and they will favor them, and they will feed them. The bacteria will feed these plants more, so these plants survive compared to other plants. Most of them will sprout, but many will die, and these will remain. And that's an indicator. When you find a nitrogen fixing weed coming in your garden, you know that you have messed up the nitrogen cycle in your forest garden, and you will plant more nitrogen fixing trees that are beneficial for you, creators of firewood, creators of food. You'll probably go with a bean crop or a cowpea crop. Beans, cowpeas, inoculated with rhizobium. This is a product. It's a bacteria available in the market. It's a naturally occurring soil bacteria. You will add these. You'll get this packet. You'll mix it with a bit of water, and you'll soak your seeds of beans, cowpea, and kandi, that is pigeon pea, groundnut, that is your Verusenaga or Palli. You'll soak those seeds in appropriate bacteria and sow them, and that will fix your nitrogen problem in the soil. So you use weed-side indicator, and this is the second part of the maintenance that we do in a forest garden. And the third part is harvesting. You go there in appropriate season, harvest, and some plants like to be pruned. For example, mango loves to be pruned. You want to prune the mango after you harvest it so that new growth is possible and much more vigorous. If you don't cut off the twigs of mango, most mango trees will not produce year after year. They will do it once every 2 years. Um, but if you chop off the twigs, they will put out new growth, and every year they will give you a harvest. Now all those cuttings you get, you can, if you do the cutting in the right season, you can use it for grafting, and you can start a mango nursery, which is not a yield you will get from a cotton farm, but here you can start your own mango nursery from very good trees, and spread very good strains of trees. And you can do the same with sapota, you can do the same with tamarind and all those things. So, and all that extra chopping you will put on the ground as biomass, and that will be the food and nutrition for other plants down the seasons. And this, my friends, is about food forest, and we have just reached 1 o'clock. Now if you ask me any questions, I might answer them. If you give me 3 days of talking time, I will talk in much more detail and in a much better way and explain it thoroughly, so that uh, there are no questions, and you can absolutely go out anywhere in the world, whether it is Himalayas, whether it is Norway, whether it is South Africa, whether it is India, whether it is Thailand, whether it is Japan. You can go there and establish a food forest if you give me 3-4 days, or even a PDC, a time for a PDC, 12 days. I can go that far. But since it is only 3 hours, I have to stop it now. And I hope I have given you enough knowledge to go kickstart your forest gardens. And on a last note, remember this: if you have your buildings like in Hyderabad all around the place, the sun is going to get absorbed by these concrete um, buildings which are more like coffins, and there is an effect called heat island effect. That is, during the evenings and nights, all this heat comes out as radiation, microwave and stuff like that. All the roads, cement roads, they give out heat during the night, and the temperature is sometimes up to 6 to 8 degrees more, 6 to 8 degrees centigrade more than what the atmosphere really gives you. And that means more air conditioning, more electricity, bad health, more deaths related to heat, less plants, less birds, less fruit, all of that. But if you start putting in forest gardens along, wherever you have space there, let me erase this a little bit. Yeah. You start putting in your forest gardens in patches, in parks. You start growing trees there, and you start putting in rooftop gardens on the roofs, and you start putting trees all around the buildings. They, when it gets hot, first of all, the heat island effect will go away because the sunlight is not being absorbed by the buildings but by the plants. So it will reduce a lot. They'll also provide cool, moist air, the absolute right temperature 27 degrees for human condition in India. You have 27 degrees, that is when you are most healthy and you have least number of diseases, and that can be maintained with appropriate gardens in your balconies, in your on your rooftops, and you have these islands of forest gardens that will take off all the extra carbon dioxide that people are releasing through their cooking, through their vehicles, and through their breathing, and do a good oxygen cycling there. All the runoff water from the roofs, all the water rainfall that happens can be collected and channeled into this. And if your forest gardens have a lot of timber trees, not just food, you can even recycle your grey water and black water through forest gardens and avoid this problem of stinking roads in Secunderabad and other places where all this nonsense is coming out, or it's dumped in Musi river and polluting rivers. You can create a very beautiful human habitat. And if you're intelligent enough, if we are intelligent enough as human beings, we'll start putting biodigesters on top of our buildings. Biogas, very important technology. There is Aarti Foundation. They have designed a beautiful system in Indore, I think. Indore, not indoors, but Indore, a city. And they are putting it there. You can put it on every building, and all the garden residue can go into the biogas digester and provide gas connection for at least a few houses in an apartment. And if you are living in an independent house, a good biodigester will give you enough to cook food, especially if you add in your rocket stove with all the extra timber from your extra wood from your forest gardens, and you have a very local fuel production going on beautifully, and the ecological benefits of that are amazing. This, my friends, is for this session. I'm going to come on camera now and hope this session has been useful for you. Now we have solar panels here on our buildings. We have rooftop gardens here. We are going to install biogas digesters at the nearest opportunity when it really makes sense. To do it here, there are a lot of variables here as to whether we will stay in the same houses or will shift. So based on that, if we are staying here for a long period of time, we are going to put biogas digesters on every building here. We are planning to buy 2 buffaloes to provide dairy, but more importantly to recycle all the cooked waste that we have in Nagol, where we live, and we are in the process of creating a demonstration of absolute abundance here in Nagol through permaculture thinking. We are teaching, as you can see, this webinar. We are going all around talking about this to people and helping them make the right decisions. We are not forcing this on anybody. The idea is to think like this and come up with your own solutions for your own situations, and that is permaculture essentially. There is a PDC happening, and Sai is the main teacher. It is his first full-fledged PDC where he is teaching almost the entire course. If I have time, I will jump in and do a cameo here and there, probably spend time with the students in the evening, subverting their minds towards more ecological thinking and more ecological living. But that PDC is really important because all this stuff is covered in much more depth and lucid way, so that you are able to come up with solutions that can really change the world to be a positive place. Because where there is food abundance, and where there is fuel abundance, and where there is abundance of oxygen and natural environment, scientific studies show that the crimes go down, that strife goes down, riots happen less, people are more peaceful, and they find a time to to do better things like art. They are less stressed out, less family troubles. All over, we can improve just by doing the right things which are productive economically as well as health wise, and we can do that with permaculture. So thanks for coming for this webinar. I think I'm going to end my talk here and hand it over to Sai to finish it off. I hope this webinar helps all the people who are live here and those who are going to watch an inkling into how to establish a forest garden, a food forest if you want, a timber forest if you want. Various benefits I have discussed in the short time I have here. Thanks for all the support. Please do keep watching this particular channel, Gardens of Abundance, because a lot more webinars are going to come out with all these essential technologies and knowledge that we are going to share. Of course, as much of it as possible for free. We don't want to give it all for free for ethical reasons, because we want all this knowledge to be a profession. We want young people to take up this as an earning model. Doing good to the society, extreme good to the society, and being able to live on that is a very noble thing, and we need more occupations like that rather than the kind of stuff that we have. A lot of stuff that is not really useful to the society, to the locality, and people are making money off it. These days it has become in such a way that you are either doing it philanthropically for free. Anything good you have to do it for free, and people are unable to dedicate their lives to all these beautiful pursuits because they can't earn a living on this. So I don't want to teach all of this for free. Absolutely no. In India, we need more young people who can live while teaching this stuff. At the same time, I'm giving out enough information to get the transformation going on across the society so that we don't fall off the precipice of ecological and social disaster. It's a hard balance, and we are trying our best. If possible, please support everybody who is trying to do this by giving an economic value to it. We don't need it for this webinar anyways. We don't need it. We are giving this out for free, absolutely free for everybody, because this is fundamental education where every child should have got in their schools for what they have paid. They are paying immense fees, and they are getting A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and all that, and that's it. No. There has to be something good to do with those ABCDs, and they have to learn all this in English as well as in Telugu and in Hindi and all the local languages. And schools should be teaching this. We are doing it, and it's a philanthropic work. It's a duty, a responsibility for us. But please do support the PDCs that we are doing. We charge fees for that. At the same time, we are doing a lot of free workshops for poor farmers, economically backward farmers. We do it absolutely for free. We understand the value of getting the information out. At the same time, please don't allow this to become a complete philanthropic activity where young people can't get into this. Please maintain an economical value for the kind of information we are giving. We need millions and millions of people. For the crores of population we have, we need millions of teachers out there who can do this full time and earn a living. With that message, keep doing your gardens, do rooftop gardens, establish forest gardens everywhere you can see, save native species, and rock on. Thanks for watching. Once again, thanks for the participation. DJ signing off. Over to Sai. Bye-bye.
Hi, I think all of you must have been pretty drained by this session, because this was completely a roller coaster of what all possibilities are there with food forests. So you would have seen that the yield of food or fruit is just incidental in a particular sense. There's a lot of yield just around the corner. You basically start providing habitats to bees, birds, and then you are getting cooling effects. There is a lot to food forest than just food, and a lot to forest gardens than just garden. So as DJ was saying, I would be conducting a PDC from December 14th to December 28th. I'll do just a quick screen share of where you can find more information. Yeah, so this is the Facebook page that I maintain, and it usually houses all the activities that me, Dwarakanath, Upendra, Madhu, Sai Kalyan, Sai Rohan, and other friends of mutual friends, the kind of permaculture work that we do, the free gardening sessions that we do. So most of our announcements, most of the work that we do is mentioned on this page. The link for this would be facebook.com/gardens of abundance. I hope this is also visible, uh, clearly visible. Here, if you just go to the more and you click on events, you will come across permaculture design certificate course being held in Hyderabad from December 14th to December 28th. In the description, which is given here, in the more section, you would have my phone number and my email address. So if you stay in Hyderabad or nearby in to this place, Bangalore, Delhi, or some other place, do join in if you can. If you stay, I think a couple of international people audience would also have joined us. Do go to a reputed teacher and get the basic knowledge of permaculture, because it's not just the knowledge of permaculture that needs to go out, but it's also the fact that we need lots and lots of designers. So we need to create as many designers as possible, and that is one of the main reasons that most of permaculture professionals would try to conduct a permaculture design certificate course, for the simplicity in which permaculture knowledge can be spread. Now, another good page to see would be Dwarakanath Jnaneswar's Facebook album. This is Experiments with Nature, June 2013. You could find lot many photos of the things that we keep doing. There would be other albums also mentioned on Forest Garden. So just to keep progress with that, this is what we did in 2013. It's almost 2015, and I think a couple more photos would have been updated or would be updated pretty soon. We also maintain, one sec. Yeah. We also have YouTube channels where we given lots of information on what you could be doing, not just on home scale, but on agricultural scale as well. We are involved in a couple of permaculture projects where we are trying to put in the principles of permaculture in as much detail as we can, so that we have good model example farms. Some of Dwarakanath Jnaneswar DJ students have been establishing permaculture farms. So more updates on that would be given out through this channel and through these kind of webinar sessions. Once again, thanks a lot for joining, and we have a special guest. So shall we end this? Okay, thanks a lot. If you have, you can continue the discussion further either on the same YouTube page, or better would be to come onto Facebook, because it's easier that way. Thanks for joining, and take care. Bye.